Welcome back, everybody. It's time for us to talk about Transcendentalism. And even though here in American Lit, we'll be focusing just on two Transcendentalists, Emerson and Thoreau, there were many other Transcendentalists that were writing and doing a lot of amazing things during this time, such as Margaret Fuller, William Channing, Louisa May Alcott, who wrote Little Women, Elizabeth Peabody, George Ripley, and Walt Whitman as well. So it's important to remember that this was not just a few people, it was many people involved. So when we look at the word Transcendentalism, we can see inside of it the Latin root that we get the word from that literally means, and the Latin root, to climb over or beyond. And when we look, right, this is a great way to think about what Transcendentalism means, what it means to experience a transcendent moment, to be seeking transcendence, is you're trying to climb over something, to move beyond something. So what is that something that we're trying to climb over? What is that something that we're trying to move beyond? We're trying to climb over and move beyond the material and the empirical. So again, the empirical, we'll start with this one, move backwards. When we were with the Federalists, they had as their influential thinker John Locke, right? And empiricism, this deals with the scientific method, right? Where things are logical order, sequence, steps, right? That we learn through our senses, right? Tabula rasa. So we're seeing as we continue to move through the course, all these ideas were just snowballing, just piling them one atop the other. So that's the empirical. The material, this is our bodies, the material world that we live in. This is what we're trying to climb over and then move beyond. So what what Transcendentalism does, it emphasizes intuition and the spiritual. Now, many people viewed Transcendentalism as a religion, and that's not the way to think about Transcendentalism. Number one, because when you have a religion, you have rules and established orders and methods, and this is what Transcendentalism is moving away from. And a good way to think about this is epistemology. And when we talk about epistemology, that's how we know what we know, right? So if we think about where we began in the course with the Puritans, right? For the Puritans, how do they know what they know, right? So the emphasis was upon God, revelation through God, right? The only way that we could experience salvation was it was a gift from God, predestination, all those terms, right? Then we moved into the Federals. If you remember some of the prominent Federal writers. And then what happens as we move from one period to the next? Very gradually, things start to shift. So again, we're talking about epistemology. How do we know what we know? And again, this was during the Enlightenment, which is also called neoclassicism. New classics. So how do we know what we know? By studying history, by looking back into the past, by using science, right? So this is how we know what we know. Now, as we move into Romanticism, we pick up Transcendentalism. So now, how do we know what we know? A lot of this is just intuition, or it's innate. It's just something that we have. So what happens, tabula rasa, which if you remember is blank slate. So in other words, when we're born, we're just a clean whiteboard. And then as we go through life, we accumulate knowledge, information, right? Very empirical. But intuition deals with things that are innate. They are found within us. We can talk about them and explain them, but ultimately, their origin is just something that we're born with, unlike something that we get from God or something that we get from studying history or learning about through science. So we're seeing that we have a very different viewpoint, very different philosophy of life regarding epistemology, how we know what we know, with Transcendentalism. Now, it's important to remember that not everyone during this time was a transcendentalist. In fact, as the Transcendentalists started to become more popular and more people started to embrace this way of living, this philosophy, a lot of people made fun of them, including Edgar Poe. Yeah. So there's a lot of controversy that was involved with this movement. And again, it's wrong to call this a religion, right? Puritanism, right? The Puritans, that was religion. Deism, right? That was a religion. But now, when we talk about something spiritual, it's not a religion. For example, you might have a friend or a family member who reads the Bible and prays and is Christian, but never goes to church. Reason being is that person, that friend or family member, they're emphasizing, right, as their life is not a religious in nature, but spiritual in nature. And that's what the Transcendentalists were about. And we'll pick up some more underlying terms and ideas with Transcendentalism and the Transcendentalists in the next lecture.